One of the most common pieces of advice you're probably going to get is that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Now, I know it sounds mimetic saying that. I know it sounds like I'm just repeating a catchphrase that everybody says, but when you think about it, it really is true if you look at the way that humans tend to deal with problems. Everyone has the ability to move on to an extent. Everyone, especially when you're as young as I am, can find something new in themselves to give to others, and then eventually find other people because of that, and everyone has the ability to improve themselves to the point of not feeling upset about whatever's troubling them. I've came to this realization emotionally very recently, because I've always been someone who is very depressed, and I still get suicidal sometimes. I still get anhedonic sometimes, where, my mood just gets so bad, the pain just gets so bad that it feels like I want to end things. But the most suicidal I had been recently was when my boyfriend broke up with me. In that moment, I felt as if I was never going to be able to find anyone else. I felt as if everything was just ending full sail right there. But when you think about it, it's obviously not the case, because this was, a teenage relationship with two people who have their brains still in development, who have their, behavior still in development. And so if we were to think about this from the perspective of, I am someone who is going to change a lot in the future, it's very naive and even dangerous to believe that this is something that's going to last forever, or that this is something that even should last forever, or that, I should be that upset about it. But the thing is that when you get those chemicals going, when you fall in love, it is essentially just your brain going off and going, oh boy, this is good, this is pleasure, and a lot of those pleasurable feelings can override reason. That can make it to where you don't really think about if this is a logically healthy relationship to be in. It doesn't really make you think about, should this be the case? I don't know. You just think about, okay, I want to fuck, because that's what your brain is programmed to do, and so many aspects of that are just as animalistic as it can possibly be. People say, oh yeah, the mature love this, mature love that, but the thing that causes mature love, the reason why it's there is because people logically decide it to be there. People from a biological standpoint were just meant to fuck as many people as they possibly can to propagate the species. That is the extent of where love goes. It's not all this hippity-dippity romantic bullshit that you always tend to hear. That's what it's about, It's just simply a trap to expand the paradigms that are already in place. And I mean, that's fine, because the species gotta go on, but how does that affect you as an individual? How do those chemicals going off in your brain affect you? And I think once you realize, yes, this is simply a chemical reaction, this is just my brain going off, it makes everything so much more clear. And emotionally, it still hurts at the time after you realize that. It's gonna hurt for a while, but you can move on. You can eventually get away from that person, and then after you get away from them, you start to realize all the problems that plagued the relationship in the first place. I know with my ex, there were disgustingly large problems that I had with him that I simply would not try to mention or would just brush under the rug, and I tried to change myself very heavily for him. There were things that would actively make me scared about him, even, that I just suppressed that fear. I just didn't think about it. I just tried to, again, brush it under the rug because I wanted to change who I was for him. And it ended up just not working out. And that's okay, because you can find other people and you can move on. But at the time, you know, when that person leaves you, you're not thinking clearly. You're just still thinking about those chemicals that used to be in you, and then, like, once they're gone, it's like you're having withdrawals from a drug, you know? It's dangerous, it's powerful, that's how your brain was meant to deal with these things. And so breakups will cause an immense amount of grief for people. But trust me when I say this, it does get better. Eventually, after the person is gone away from you for long enough, after you've had time to reflect, after the pain has subsided, you will realize that it was the best decision for things. Unless you sit there and you continue to stew over that toxic ideology of this was the only person I could have, nothing will ever get better. Of course, if you keep repeating that to yourself and if you keep isolating yourself, you're gonna have a bad time and you're not gonna be able to get through this. But you need to surround yourself with positive people. You need to continually do things that are positive for your own lifestyle. Going outside, getting out, you know, trying to meet new people, trying to be proactive in your mental health and your diet. These things can only go so far in the short term. It's gonna feel really bad. I know for days on end my heart was beating out of my chest. But you know what I did to combat that? I went into calls with my favorite people, and many times I would fall asleep in those calls because the comfort of hearing their voice was enough to help my heart from beating as much as it was. And let me tell you, talking about my ex, talking about all these things that were going on, thinking about it, never being able to get it off my mind, hurt a lot at the time. But it's not permanent. And yeah, I know that pain is gonna feel terrible when it comes at you, but it will go away. And the fact that it goes away eventually is enough to live for. If you can continue going, eventually your brain just processes these things to the point where it becomes all irrelevant. You know, these chemicals can only stay in your brain for so long. They can only be there for so long until eventually they die out. And after you've been away from someone for long enough, eventually you can realize everything that was wrong with it in the first place. You can realize the faults of those chemicals and where they were coming from. And I think once you realize that, it all becomes much, much easier to take. And I've been a lot happier lately, to be honest. Like, I've stopped talking to him. I'm probably not going to talk to him again for a very long time, if at all. And so, I feel really good, to be honest. Like, it felt terrible for a while, but these last 2-ish days, I haven't had a single depressive episode since I stopped talking to him. And it used to be that I would have them, like, all the time. I would just feel like shit all the time, and now I just feel so much more liberated. I just feel so much better, and it's really nice. I hate to say to cut the toxic people out of your life, but to some extent that is what it was, right? Like, it was something that was actively stressing me out and making me upset, and I was obsessing over him. And now that I don't have that influence in my life, now that I don't have those chemicals in my brain, I just feel so much more calm and safe. And when I would talk to him after he broke up with me, and like even when me and him were friends, I would sometimes get this, like, where I would just feel really upset talking to him because there were just certain things about him that scared me or that I was upset with. And I didn't really talk about them very much, but they were a glaring problem that I just deeply suppressed out of, you know, this naive love that I had for him, because he just happened to share some similar elements to me, that he just happened to work in the same space as me to the point where I could feel understood by him. But I don't necessarily need to be 100% understood by everybody. The thing about people who understand you on a very deep level is that they probably come from a similar place. And if you come from a similar place than me, that is a legitimate concern. I don't want to date someone who's similar than me, because honestly, I am not the best influence, I'm not the best person, and I don't deal with things the best. I didn't come from a very good place. And so when I think about dating someone who's similar to me, I can't help but sit there and just go, ugh, no, not again. That sounds like a foolish endeavor, you know? And so, next person I get with, I'd like them to be much different than me. And, you know, someone who's able to understand where I'm coming from on, like, a cognitive level, but doesn't necessarily have the emotional baggage to relate to what I'm feeling, which I think is a healthy thing in many ways, because obviously that person isn't going to have the same issues if they don't come from the same place, and they would still be able to empathize with you and love you regardless and be there for you. I don't need undying empathy or anything like that. I just need someone to understand to an extent. And I would like to, the next person I would like to be with, I would like them to be very kind and just different than me in general. Like, I would want someone who just embodies a lot of elements that are completely divergent to me, so that way I could find a form of strength in those differences. Like, I do these things for myself and for the other person, and then they do their own thing for themselves and for me, to where, like, we could combine our strengths together and then better each other through those differences. I think that would be really healthy. So that would probably be what I'm looking for next, but I'm not really looking for someone right now simply because I need to work out my own mental issues before I can even think about dating somebody else. But it is a comforting thought, right? It's a comforting thought that eventually all of these feelings will pass. And I know how hard it is. At the time, it doesn't feel like it's gonna pass at all. You know, I was gonna overdose. I was getting the fentanyl already. I was going to try and overdose on the Lexapro, which, I mean, overdosing on Lexapro is stupid because it only put you in a coma, so I'm glad I didn't ultimately do that and my mom caught me, but still, like, I was gonna buy fentanyl. You know, I was going to end things right there, and I could have easily bought it. So, you know, I'm glad I didn't go through with that, because life is worth living. There are good things out there in the world. It's just you have to focus on them, and you have to focus on the good people within your life and just hold those things close. And eventually it does subside, because all love is just a bunch of fucking chemicals. It's not even that big a deal. When you think about it in a sense of nature, it's not that big a deal. So, eventually it goes away. And by the time it goes away, you know, you're woke. You're woke to it. There's a good video that I'm gonna link in the description just about how love is like a form of deception to your mind, and it's really good. It goes through all of these things. My next relationship, I would like to be much more mature and committed. So, hopefully, you know, hopefully that ends up being the case. Although I might also just date around a little bit, just to, you know, just to fuck, or see how things go with other people, just as a learning experience. But regardless, you know, I'm just glad he's out of my life at this point, just because he caused me so much stress. Like, there were so many of my feelings that I was suppressing for him, for my love for him, you know. I was trying so hard to not be annoyed by certain things he would do, and it drove me insane at times. So, yeah, I'm really happy that it's over. I've been doing a lot better.